The entire martial arts world, the combat sports world, is filled up with people who have massive egos and who are going to potentially give you bad advice. Today we're going to talk about 5 times you should look at an opponent and go, no, I'm not going to fight them right now. Maybe in the future, but not right now. We need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves because our coach will not always give us sound advice. What I've noticed throughout the years of being in combat sports is very often coaches will tell you all the stuff they would have done. I would have done this and this and this in the past, and they expect you to do the same thing. But it's not always wise advice, and we need to take care of ourselves. Be smart. Recognize that damage can be a very realistic aspect of competition. Before we get into our 5 tips, I want to give a shout out to the partner of this episode. There are not many things that I enjoy more than a good sweat. The problem is I can't work out endlessly throughout the day. By the end of the day, I'm usually very fatigued, and going to a public sauna, no, that's not for me. Now imagine if you could sauna from your own home for a reasonable price and get loads of health benefits that include improved sleep, soothing your muscles, weight loss, clearing your complexion, your skin, purify your body, and lower stress. All those benefits can be received from our episode partner Bond Charge's infrared sauna blanket. Now, a couple of fantastic features from Bond Charge's sauna blanket. It heats up to 170 degrees. Number 2, it only takes a matter of minutes to reach that heat. You're not going to be sitting around waiting endlessly for this thing to get to the temperature you want. And Bond Charge offers free shipping worldwide, no hidden costs, plus a 12-month no hassle warranty. If you guys are interested in picking up an infrared sauna blanket or one of many other items which they have, you can head over to bondcharge.com/Gabriel Varga and use my promo code Gabriel15 to save 15%. So to lay some context here, and to help you understand what I would have done in my fight career, I want to give you an example. An instance when I turned down a fight with somebody, but then eventually ended up competing against them. It's all about timing. It's not about rushing things, because like I said at the beginning, you can get hurt in this sport. And if you just blindly go in against opponents, you might end up against a killer who you are not quite ready for. When I fought for this title, I faced Kevin Ross. I think I fought him in 2018. In 2011, that was the first time I ever got offered a fight against Kevin Ross. At the time, I didn't have many fights. And he was the superstar within North America for Muay Thai, known all around the world. And I went, when we start looking at this and this and this and this, I need a little bit more time before I face him. I wasn't expecting it to take 7 years. I was thinking more like, 6 months or 9 months or a year and I'll be ready. But I turned it down, went, no, it's not the right time. It's not the right amount of money as well. And eventually I ended up fighting him and getting a spectacular win. So the very first thing that we should be focusing on when we get a name of a potential opponent is looking at their weight. If they have missed weight numerous times or have fought at a higher weight class, right away we should take note and go, okay, this could mean that they're not going to step on the scale at the appropriate weight. If that happens, what am I going to do? UFC will constantly say things like, be a company man, fight anybody, anytime. But when you have somebody who's 10 pounds above you, they miss weight by, let's say, 3 pounds. And because they miss weight, they're able to stack on more weight after. So you end up going against somebody who has 5 pounds in you in the ring. If your skill levels are even, the person with the extra weight is going to take the advantage and they will most likely win. If you find, like, I'm looking up on the computer, look at this dude. Last time he fought at 155 pounds, but now he's dropping to 145. Take note. If he missed weight numerous times, take note. You need to have things established beforehand, like letting this person know, I will not fight you if you miss weight. I'm not one of those guys. Come prepared to step on the scale at the correct weight. And just stuff like that can keep you that much safer. Example, I had somebody that I fought who In his fight before me, he fought at 170 pounds. And then they told me, oh, he can drop to 145. I went, how is he gonna drop to 145? But I was out of options. They didn't have anybody else who would compete against me, so I had to fight him. He was so big, so big. And in hindsight, I probably should have gone, why the heck are you doing that massive cut? Yeah, you have to be careful, especially when you're starting in the sport. There is an argument that at some point, especially when you become a champion, that you fight anybody. Anywhere, anytime sort of idea. And yeah, that's great. But when you're starting out, you got to be careful. The second reason to avoid fighting somebody is you research their record and you find out they lied. And you might be going, that doesn't happen. Oh yes, it does. It happens a lot. And what we need to recognize is not everybody is going to be honest. There are a lot of people out there who want to take their 20-2 record against somebody who has 4 fights. And they just keep padding it and building. These guys will never become high-level fighters, the people who are going to lie about their record, because you got to beat certain people to get to the top. But they are happy to just pad their record, be able to say at the end of their career, look, I fought all these guys, I beat all these guys, and you have to be on the lookout for that. Fortunately, nowadays, with the internet, it is so much easier to look up and be like, hey, he said he had 4 fights, but I see 5, 6, oh, there's a 7th, and you start going, what the heck? They're lying. But do your research. Just don't blindly believe that people are being truthful about their records. Case in point, in one of my last fights, I got offered an opponent. They said, oh, his record is 4-0 in this discipline and 3-0 in this discipline, and that's it. And then after the fact, it ended up going, dude has like 200 amateur boxing fights, which you didn't mention. I accepted the fight anyway, but still I was like, how did you not mention that until we brought it up? That is some garbage. The next thing which you should be doing, especially if you're on your first or second fight, is looking up footage. Now, if you're on your first or second fight, there's a good chance the person you're going to be going against, or hopefully should be going against, should hopefully only have 1 or 2 fights as well. We don't want to be fighting people with massive record discrepancies. But you can still nowadays go to somebody's social media and be like, oh, there's a clip of him hitting pads. Oh, there's him doing some sparring. And you should be able to make a very fast assessment of this person's skill level. Remember, there are killers out there everywhere. There's not many of them, but imagine myself, for instance. There was a point when I had 1 fight and 2 fights and 3 fights, and all the guys who initially fought me through the early stages of my career, I kind of just beat them up. It wasn't because I had loads of experience compared to them, it's just that my skill level was so high, but people didn't know that. But if you look at previous fights and you go, oh, this guy is really good, he doesn't look like he's somebody who has 1 or 2 fights, there's a little warning there that, ooh, this guy could be a future world champion just very early in his career, and that's somebody that I should avoid. Especially if you feel like, oh, my skill level realistically is down here and I'm never gonna be a world champion, then protect yourself. Now, we talked about people lying about their records, right? They go, okay, I only have 6 fights, but they actually have 20. But another thing in terms of records that you have to be aware of is record discrepancy. So when I was early in my fight career, myself and my father were very adamant initially that we don't fight anybody. When I was in my first, I think 5 fights, we don't fight anybody who has more than 5 fights. Once I got to the point where I breached that sort of 5 fights, I went, okay, we're not gonna fight somebody with more than 10 fights. Once we got past 10, then we opened up. And then I started being like, oh, okay, you know, I'm gonna take fights against guys like Lerdsila when I don't have that many fights. He has hundreds and I have like somewhere in the teens. At some point, you gotta just open up. But early on, experience makes a difference. And if you are on your first fight, it's coming up, and they offer you a fight against somebody who has 5 events under their belt already, you should right away be going, how good will I be in 5 fights time? Hopefully a lot better than I am today. And there's a chance that the guy that you're going to be fighting, same thing. He's had that time, that experience, and he's going to be a bit more of a killer in the ring. So I like to have even matches in records until you feel like, okay, my skill level has gotten to this point where I can open up a little bit more. In my experience, that's about 5 fights. when you can kind of open up a bit, and then after 10 fights, you can really open up. That's just my opinion. But there will be people who will try and go, oh, you know, this is just your second fight, but I know you don't have a lot of experience, but let's put you up against this guy who has 8. Really don't worry about it. It'll be okay. And the last thing you have to really be on the lookout for is making sure that people don't have loads of experience in other sports, other martial arts. Maybe they haven't competed in them, but if they offer you a fight against somebody who has 0, right? They're saying this guy has no record in kickboxing, you have a 0 record in kickboxing, I'm gonna put you 2 guys together, but the guy over here, yourself, you've been training for 6 months, or a year, or a year and a half. And then you find out that this guy over here, yeah, it's his first kickboxing fight, but he's been training since he was like 6 years old in jiu-jitsu. You might go, oh, jiu-jitsu, different sport, but it's still a martial art, you still learn a lot. Or they have a massive karate background. Look guys, when I had my very first fight, I think it was my first, and then my second, maybe even my third, everybody in my gym went, Gabriel, you're gonna wipe the floor with anybody who's just started. This isn't fair. And this was very, very good promotion on the part of the guys who were helping me through my initial stages. They weren't looking at me going, oh, okay, you know what, Gabriel, we're gonna help you out and give you a bunch of guys who you're just gonna knock out in the first 10 seconds. They said, yes, we wanna put you up against people who don't have loads of ring experience, but we need to find you guys who have been around the block, who have been in the martial arts world for a long time. So I fought a guy who owned a gym over in Vancouver, who had been teaching for decades, who was quite a bit older than me. I think I was 21 or 22 and he was probably like 35. That was one of my first opponents. I fought another guy who had this massive Taekwondo background, who had had a couple fights, something like a decade ago, and was coming back to competition even though he'd been competing, training in Muay Thai for about the last 3 or 4 years. So we found people who were on the same sort of level in terms of what other sports have they done, how long have they been involved in these martial arts, a decent amount of time. And this does make a difference, right? Somebody comes to you and says, oh, this guy's been training in karate for 15 years, but you guys are doing kickboxing. It's a different fight sport. It doesn't matter that he's done karate. Yeah, it matters. So be on the lookout for that. Be aware of that. Again, with Google nowadays, you can research the person's name, type in karate, and if something pops up and you're like, whoa, look at all these articles about him being an instructor or going to tournaments, light contact stuff, but still that's gonna help them. Be on the lookout for that. So there are 5 times where I would say, no, I'm not fighting this opponent and I'm gonna walk away. Again, at some point you have to open up and you have to be willing to fight anybody if you want to get to the very highest level. But as you're building those initial records, as you're trying to see how good you are, but still protect yourself, it's important to walk away from opponents sometimes, and your coach may not always do that for you, especially if they are your coach and the person who's promoting the event. They gotta make fights, so the people in the seats are gonna buy the tickets. Be on the lookout, guys, be safe, and as always, train hard. I will see you back here soon for another video.